So I know we've been bouncing back and forth between lots of different projects lately, and I'm sorry about that. Hopefully it's not giving you whiplash, but I'm trying to make progress on as many of these projects as possible. And yeah, today we're hopping back to the Sega Pengo. So this is part 4 of the Sega Pengo arcade restoration project. And yeah, there's a lot of work to do in this episode. So if you remember, this game had been previously converted to a SNK Time Soldiers, which is a rotary joystick game. And as part of that conversion, they totally messed up the control panel. They drilled a bunch of extra holes for additional buttons and installed a pair of rotary joysticks. And so we've got our work cut out for us to, deconvert this, convert it back to a Pengo. We've got to strip off all the Time Soldiers controls off. We've got to get the Time Soldiers control panel overlay removed. We've got to strip all of that down. We got to figure out some way of filling the extra holes that have been drilled into the metal control panel. So we got to do some metal work on this thing. Yeah, get that all nice and smooth and back to perfect. And then apply a new control panel overlay, reinstall the controls, and a bunch of other work too. So we definitely have a lot to do in this episode, and a lot of stuff that we really haven't done together yet on this channel. So if that sounds like fun, why don't we head out to the garage and get started? Let's go!
Overtime!
Okay, we're out here in the garage on a beautiful Saturday morning. I was going to be doing this last night, Friday night, but I sat down, got everything set up, and before I started filming, the power went out. We were in the middle of a big thunderstorm with lots of rain, which we needed here in Virginia. So cracked open a couple of cold ones and just sat and enjoyed the light show with the lightning. But yeah, now we can get back to work here. So with the Pengo, want to get the control panel squared away. Obviously, it's been converted to a Time Soldiers, which is an SNK rotary game, and it's got these SNK LS30 rotary joysticks, which are, I guess, somewhat valuable these days. So wanted to go ahead and remove them so that we can, repair the extra holes that have been drilled into the metal control panel and bring it back to a Pengo setup. So let me go and remove these cables here. And again, I'm trying to be very careful to not damage any of this. And okay, that's I guess the wiring harness for the rotary joysticks. The rest of these are hardwired into, I don't know, these look like they might be original Pengo connectors here, all packed up. What's nice is I believe the red and sort of orangish, yellowish buttons, I think these are original to Pengo. These blue ones were added later for the player 1 and 2 start buttons, but I think the orange ones maybe go down here for the start buttons, and the red ones stay up top on either side of a single joystick in the middle to be the action buttons for Pengo. But there's kind of a trick to removing these SNK rotary joysticks. Again, I think these are LS30s, and you use a Q-tip, and there is a specialized tool that's designed to remove these, but I learned this Q-tip trick from another arcade YouTuber called Supreme Judge, who does more JAMA, whatever type of stuff, and got to remove I'll put a link to that original video in the video description here, but basically you take a Q-tip, you take the cotton off of the end, you bend it sort of at about a ½ inch or so, and there are these little like teeth that come down, and there's holes in there, and you kind of jam the Q-tip up into it, and it should, in theory, if you get it lined up right, and maybe we'll use our needle nose pliers to help push. It should, in theory, I've not done this before. Maybe we have to do it to both sides if it's really stuck in there. Another way to do it is basically there's a little insert in the cap here that we're trying to remove so that we can unscrew the the top of the joystick from the rest of the assembly to remove the whole joystick from the control panel. And another way to do it is kind of jam in a really thin flathead screwdriver and sort of pry it out, but that will eat up the plastic, and I don't really want to do that if I can avoid it, because again, these are somewhat valuable, especially if you ever see green ones, the green rotary joysticks. I think those only really came on one game. Those are ridiculously valuable. Those go for many hundreds, if not $1,000. Let's see, I'm having trouble getting in there. I've seen this technique work. All right, I got both of them. Little bit of persistence paid off with the Q-tips. I actually sent a note over to Kay from Prime Arcade, who does the Coin Jam podcast with me and Jeremiah and Liam. He recommended using like a hook and a scribe to get underneath it, something more sturdy than a Q-tip, but I was eventually able to get both of them loose with a Q-tip, and you can kind of see maybe how they pop up out of the top once you sort of get the tabs dislodged underneath, and we'll see what it looks like when we open them up. So two little tabs here that hold this cap in place, and then we've just got a bolt in there on the bottom. This one looks a bit dirtier, more beat up. I don't know if this is the first player, I guess. Open this one up, and oh, we're missing one of these tabs, and I don't see it anywhere, so I must have been missing for a while. I don't know if anyone reproduces these. But now let's try to get in here. I got a 10 millimeter socket. This seems correct. Here we go. And almost. All right. Here we go, our little brass bolt there. And then all of this, I can see there's a bunch of other stuff here, but we should be able to get that washer off. We'll do the same thing over here. Whoops. There we go. Oh, this, what is going on here? There's like an assembly piece. So there's our bolts. Yeah, there's like an insert, a metal insert, brass insert inside of the joysticks themselves, and this little, like, I guess, grabber piece. So yeah, those come right off. Okay, didn't break anything, or at least I don't think. Take the washer off here, and then the rest of this we will do from underneath. Again, we've got sort of 4 bolts holding each joystick assembly in place, and again, this is also wired in quite a bit for up, down, left, and right. So we'll kind of be taking these all off one by one. All right. As you could see, one of those bolts or nuts was really stubborn, but a little bit of WD-40 and some elbow grease and some vice grip, Saber grip tool here made short work of it. Let me grab a little bit of paper towel to clean up the WD-40. I'm not really worried about damaging the control panel. I just don't want this getting into the leaf switches or the rotary sticks or anything like that. A lot of rust going on here. Let's see if I can knock this bolt loose. There we go. And they're like sticking to the plexi up front, but okay. Joystick assemblies are free. Again, they're soldered in. I think instead of unsoldering them, I'll just cut them loose. So just go like this. I don't think I'm going to reuse any of this wiring, so Not really worried about it. There we go. There's one of them. Looks pretty good. A little dirty, but that'll clean up well. And this other one here, there's like a ground loop that I don't really need to worry about. And there we go. There's our second one. A little bit of rust on top, but not bad at all. So then I want to remove all these buttons here. And again, I think at least two of these are original Pengo buttons. I'm not sure if they use the same sort of leaf switch assembly, but I'll probably just reuse it. And I'm just comparing the blue ones, which were clearly added, and the leaf switches at a minimum look a little bit different. They look newer. So yeah, I'll just use my needle nose pliers and kind of loosen the cowl nuts here. That one's already loose. That one's already loose. That one's already loose. We'll take all these off. So it's nice, as often operators would reuse some of the original parts in their conversions, you know, buttons and whatever, so you don't have to track down, you know, the correct colors or, you know, whatever type of stuff. Yeah, there's a little spacer here that doesn't appear on the others. Okay. And let's see what we're doing over here. That one's loose, that one's loose. These are all already loose. These pal nuts come right off. All right, and then we'll be able to see what we're dealing with in terms of damage that we're going to need to repair. And I can see already a lot of holes to fill. So there's our button assembly, and we don't want to lose those leaf switch buttons, or any of these buttons. But yeah, oh, and okay, the plexi is starting to come off, and we can remove that here with, again, a 10mm nut driver. Come right off. And the plexi was just covering up the Time Soldier's artwork. And these leaf switch buttons, the long ones, the way they work, you know, you can really kind of mount them over plexi because the depth of where the button sits or is attached below is sort of adjustable. Almost there, almost there. And again, there's like this sort of unique hinge thing here that Sega Gremlin used. Almost reminds me of like a, you know, like a bathroom stall or a gas station bathroom sort of latch. There we go. There's our filthy old plexi to hold the door closed. And this is a mounting, and I believe this is the original sort of Molex connector for the entire control panel assembly. Maybe we'll find some way to reuse that would sort of attach here. And then we'll flip over. And wow, what is this? Glue or something? This is not my WD-40 because I only did it in a couple of spots. So that's filthy. So yeah, basically what we're going to need to do is this is an original hole. This is an original hole. I believe this is the original joystick hole with the original joystick mounting points. So we need to fill these two holes, and these two holes. So 6 holes we need to fill. 3 of them are going to be relatively simple holes to fill up. The other ones have sort of a cutout that we're going to have to make somehow. And of course we're going to have to avoid sort of the mounting sort of points. So we've kind of got our work cut out for us. But let me clean up a little bit and then we'll take off this old control panel overlay. All right, I started tugging on one of the corners here, and I think there's a chance that this might just sort of peel off. Let's see. Nope. I say that and it immediately falls apart. There's definitely some parts of this that are not as tightly secured. Maybe we'll get lucky. These are always such pain to remove old. Yep, it's coming right apart. Okay. Goodness. Oh my goodness. Let's see. You can kind of get edges and sort of pick at it. Oh, and I can see the old Pengo artwork underneath here. You know what I'm going to try to do? Let me grab my heat gun and see if I can help accelerate the process here a little bit. All right, as the rain now starts to pour, we're going to try to use my heat gun to see if we can help accelerate the process of removing this old control panel overlay. And again, I can see the remnants of the original Pengo overlay. So this is just a, you've seen me use this before. This is just a cheap heat gun I got off of Amazon, I think. And it has a bunch of different attachments, including this scraper attachment. So I'll hook it up like that, turn it on, and sort of go to work here, trying to heat up to loosen, soften, and remove this material. I was talking to some of my buddies, including Dell from Delusional's Arcade, and him and some of the other guys were recommending a scraper attachment for like a Dremel multi-tool. And I went through my attachments that I have for my Dremel, and I don't have a scraper, and I went to Ace Hardware and they didn't have any in stock, and I didn't want to go all the way to Home Depot or Lowe's or Harbor Freight, so we'll make do with this for now. And that smells terrible. It's sort of melting this old plastic, but it's you know, sort of coming. We'll have to come in with, you know, more of a scraper later and touch it up, and I've got like a wire wheel and whatever type of stuff to really try to get all this off. But yeah, let me go to work on this and see what we can make from it. All right, look at this disgusting mess. We can see virtually all of the Time Soldier's control panel overlay has been removed, but we've got quite a bit of remnants of the Pengo. So I think what I'm going to do is clean up a little bit. I'll throw out all this mess and we'll get set up. I'm going to try to take the wire wheel to get the rest of this off. So let's get set up to do that. All right, we've got a little break in the rain, and I've got a wire brush hooked up to my cordless drill, and we're just going to go to town on this and hopefully strip the rest of the old Pengo CPO off. All right, you can see the progress that we're making with the combination of the wire wheel and wire cup brush. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of this off camera, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like at the end. Okay, here's where I'm at. Turns out the wire wheel worked really, really great to strip everything off. A lot better than the wire cup brush, which kind of wanted to walk all over the place. But yeah, once I switched to the sort of more traditional wire wheel, everything went really, really well. Took all the glue and old, both of the remainders of the older control panel overlays, the Pengo and the Time Soldiers on top. Totally stripped all that off and took virtually all of the rust off too, which is great. I gave it a sanding and a cleaning, and I think we're in good shape. So the next step is to repair these extra holes. So basically, if we look from below, the joystick should go here right in the middle, and there are the 4 mounting holes for the Pengo joystick. And then we have the 2 action buttons here and here. So I need to replace 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 additional holes. And these 2 holes up front here are supposed to be there for the start buttons on the control panel. So you can see a little bit of Sharpie. I went and I dry fitted the joystick that I'm going to use and the buttons just to make sure I've got good clearance. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some J-B Weld, which is kind of like a little bit like Bondo, but really more designed for metal. Like it says steel reinforced, a little bit heavier duty, higher strength. It says 5020 PSI. And essentially I'm going to use washers to kind of fill these extra holes. But, and you see they're smaller than the actual hole. The hole is right around an inch and an eighth, and I couldn't find any inch and an eighth fender washers. I got some 1 1/4 and some inch. The 1 1/4 are too big. The 1 inch is a little bit too small, but we can fill that all in with J-B Weld. But the washer on itself really isn't going to stick there. So I've got these larger washers, and basically what I'll do is use the J-B Weld to mount the larger washer onto the back of the control panel, and then the smaller washer will mount onto the larger washer. Just sort of hold it there in place, and we'll, just like Bondo, sort of cover it all up and then sand it down smooth. And that should work great. And on several of these holes, that's really not going to be a problem at all, right? But you can see some of these overlap. And so, you know, for like over here, we're going to have to, you know, put our small washer in there and have the large washer offset similarly here so that it doesn't interfere with the button or the button holder, the leaf switch button holder for it. Same kind of thing over here. We'll do this and that. This one is no problem to go here and here. This one will go like this, and we'll just keep everything sort of off to the side. And that should all be fine. The biggest issue, however, is going to be the hole that overlaps with the main joystick hole. So this hole needs to be filled, and this is the correct joystick hole. And because of the way that this joystick works, I can't really put a larger washer underneath because it'll interfere with the dust washer and everything sort of going on here. I could maybe mount the dust washer on top, but that would sort of look sloppy. So what I'm going to try to do is just use a washer. I also had to use my tin snips here to cut this washer down a little bit so that it won't interfere with the movement of the joystick. So that should be good right there. I've got a piece of packing tape that I've mounted on the back side of the control panel. Let me get all these washers and everything out of the way. Each of these goes with its buddy. And yeah, so this is going to basically, I'm hoping sort of the packing tape will kind of hold it in place while the sort of first application of J-B Weld is curing, and then I can sort of butter it over on both sides with additional J-B Weld in a second application, sand all of that smooth, and hopefully that'll be strong enough to not have somebody be able to put their finger through and do that. Although, you know, I'm sort of hoping that the dust washer on the inside will sort of help out a little bit with that. But we're gonna kind of see how that goes. And You know, to be honest, I've never used J-B Weld before on something or this much of an application. Certainly not this sort of detailed and complex. But we'll kind of see how it goes. I think I'll do one with you to start, probably this one right here being the simplest, and then we'll kind of do the rest off camera. So let me just back out the tripod a little bit. And essentially, like I said, this works a little bit like Bondo. I am going to put gloves on because this stuff is a little bit nasty. So yeah, pop open the J-B Weld, and it comes in 2 parts. And unlike Bondo, you want equal parts of the, I guess it's epoxy and hardener. So we've got our 2 parts here, or that says on the label, steel and hardener. So we'll go like this, and we have to puncture the container, and we can do the top of the cap for that. And we'll do the same thing with the hardener. Puncture the cap, or puncture the whatever. And yeah, we want equal parts here. So we'll squeeze some of that out. Okay, see, this stuff just wants to come flying out of the container. I don't know if it's sort of the pressure difference from where it was filled to where it is now. All right, that's about equal. Actually, I think I got more hardener now. Again, it wants to keep coming, so I'll add a bit more steel. Goodness. All right, we'll call that even. And, all right. Mix this up here, just like Bondo. This stuff is a bit, I don't know, thicker, but it takes longer for it to cure. What does it say? Set time in 4 to 6 hours, cure time in 15 to 24. It becomes this sort of dark gray, again, steel kind of color. Yeah, we'll just mix it up. Yeah, lovely, lovely smell. And, okay, basically I will kind of butter, oops, that's not quite mixed. So some pure black steel there. All right, I think we're good now. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of butter the back of this larger washer. And this is going to act, you know, as like a glue to hold it in place. All right, that looks good. And we will position it like so. And I've got my sort of Sharpie marker there, sort of telling me, you know, sort of where to avoid placing it so that I don't cause any problems, any interference with it. And then we'll come back here with our small washer, do the same thing, butter that side, and we'll flip over the control panel and sort of position it like this, kind of in the middle there. And then I can come back and sort of cover this up with more J-B Weld, again, like Bondo, to sort of fill it in. But yeah, that's the basic idea. So let me go and do the rest of these off camera, and then I'll come back and show you what it's like as we let it cure. Okay, here's where we're at. I think things are looking pretty good. You can see I used a ton right here in the middle because I'm hoping that it's really the top, the sort of the material, the J-B Weld material over the top is sort of holding it down in place. Then eventually we'll come back and I guess, back butter it a bit. I'm really happy with the placement of the rest of them. I didn't want to come over the top too hard because it would push away from the larger washer holding it underneath. Here's what the back side looks like. And yeah, we're going to let this cure for about 24 hours, and then we'll come back. I'll hopefully be able to remove this packing tape, and then I'll sort of cover it over with J-B Weld. Maybe we'll add a little bit to the edges of the larger washers on the backside, although they're mostly sort of glued face on onto the bottom of the control panel, and then we'll come over the top sort of like a skim coat of the J-B Weld. Then we'll let that cure for 24 hours, and then we should be ready to sand it and evaluate it, and potentially be done with our repairs to the control panel. So let's go ahead and let this cure. All right, it's about 36 hours later, actually, so good and dry. Everything's nice and solid. It has a little bit of a, I mean, it looks almost like rubber, but nice and hard. So I'm pretty happy with how this is going so far. Let me try peeling off the packing tape, and hopefully it doesn't come with the, it doesn't pull the J-B Weld off, just a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty good. We'll have to shape this a little bit just to, you know, like I said, make sure that we've got a good sort of hole here for the joystick to work in. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up another batch of J-B Weld. I'm going to skim coat the top here, and eventually we'll sand this all down nice and smooth and flush with the top of the control panel. Underneath, I'm basically going to take my finger with a glove and kind of almost, I don't know what you would call it, sort of almost like I was doing caulking. I'll sort of kind of smooth around the sort of edges of the big fender washers back here. I don't know if that's going to do anything. The other thing I'm going to try to do, if I have enough J-B Weld, is put some more packing tape down against the back side of all of these drill holes, and sort of fill in as many of these holes as I can with J-B Weld. We might have to get some more of that stuff, or eventually get what do you call it, Bondo. I'm seeing a tiny little bit of flash rust here, so we'll eventually come back over this with more sandpaper, yeah, flash corrosion on both sides. We are going to clear coat it. We'll spray it with clear coat just to seal any of that rust from coming back. So yeah, and here I think we're good on the top side for this sort of floating repair, and I will sort of coat the back pretty good, again with another batch of J-B Weld, and do our best to lay it down. So let me go and do that, and then I'll show you what it looks like once I've finished. Okay, here's how it's looking after the second application of J-B Weld. We've got a glare from the overhead lights, but yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with how we've kind of buttered over, smeared over everything. I did fill in all of the extra sort of carriage bolt holes that were added to hold the plexi in place, and we'll have to do a little bit of reshaping, especially here, of the holes that are intended to be here. But overall, I think we're good. I did completely exhaust the initial container of J-B Weld, so after we let this dry until tomorrow, I'll get a new package of J-B Weld, and we'll kind of do that sort of caulking of the large fender washers on the other side. But I think we're looking okay. So there is a lot of it here, so we'll have to do a ton of sanding. And like I said, I think we'll have to do a final sort of skim coat of maybe Bondo, just to make sure everything is nice and flat before we put the new control panel overlay on. So yeah, we'll let this dry, and then I'll come back and we'll do our last, hopefully last, application of J-B Weld on the underside. Okay, here's another progress update, and I think things are looking really, really good. Sanded down all the J-B Weld and paid particular attention to, obviously, the two buttonholes and the joystick hole in the center. For the buttonholes, I didn't need to get them perfect because most of the imperfections would be covered up by sort of the, I don't know, the surround part of the housing part of the button, although I do have a little bit of touch-up work to do there. over here on this side. It looks really, really, really great. Let's see. In the middle, I had to pay a lot of attention to the joystick hole because this is exposed, right? Rather than being covered up by the button holes are, like I said, covered up. The joystick hole is exposed, because the shaft of the joystick pokes through. So I needed this to look as perfect as possible. So I spent a bunch of time with some files, including some half-round files, and I think I got it looking really good. I really just eyeballed it, taking off a little bit at a time, and I think it looks pretty great. About as close to perfectly round as I'll be able to do. There's a little bit of just a chip missing from the J-B Weld repair. This is nice and smooth on the back side, so it's not going to interfere with the dust washer moving around. So yeah, I think I'm good. I did run out of J-B Weld, but I bought another package, a large package for the future that I don't think I'm going to use. I'm not going to sort of caulk the large washers onto the back after all. They're nice and secure, just sort of being glued with the J-B Weld on. I've got good clearance here to get the leaf switch button holder. I might actually have to take a notch out of the button holder to get it to fit over here. I've been trying to file this back, but I'm worried about damaging the repair, but we'll get it working one way or another. Yeah, so I think my next step is I am going to Bondo over this. I thought about just using the Bondo glazing and spot putty, which is designed for like pinholes and hairline cracks. There are some of these pinholes in the J-B Weld, but I'm going to go with the good old reliable Bondo body filler because some of the holes, the bolt holes that I repaired that were used to mount the plexi onto the top of the control panel, they're a little bit deeper than I'd want to fill with just that spot putty. So I'll just skim coat over these with regular Bondo, and we will be in good shape there. So yeah, I'm going to clean this off. Actually, and scuff up the J-B Weld a little bit just so the Bondo will adhere to it. Then clean it all off, and I'll apply that Bondo. We'll get that nice and smooth, and pretty soon we should be ready to apply this new control panel overlay. So stay tuned. All right, another update, and I think we're getting really close here. So after an application of Bondo and some sanding that down, I think we are in awesome shape. The hole in the middle looks perfect, about as round as I'll be able to do freehand. Filled in the sort of chip that got knocked off here and on the back side. This is nice and smooth. The back looks real nasty, but we'll get that cleaned up. So I think we're getting really close here. So my plan right now is I'm actually going to work the underside a little bit. We're going to clean up this a bit. We'll sand off all of this sort of surface corrosion, this sort of flash corrosion that's appeared. You're never going to see this, but I'll get it looking a little bit better. I'm going to spray a clear coat on it. I'm going to spray this Rust-Oleum 2X matte clear on the underside. And really what I'm hoping to do there is just sort of seal any of the rust and not let any sort of rust attack it from the underside. I will sort of mask off these spring-loaded hinges here just so the paint doesn't interfere with the mechanism. So we'll spray this underside, then we'll flip it over, we'll get all this cleaned up again, sanding off any of the flash corrosion, and then I'm actually going to do the top side in white paint. So this is, I've never used the white before. This is my favorite Rust-Oleum Universal Satin Paint and Primer in one. Just because, the reproduction control panel overlays do tend to be a bit thinner than the original. So since we've got sort of like 3 different colors here between the original metal, the J-B Weld, and then the Bondo on top, I don't want any of that blotchiness or sort of, changes in coloration to come through the control panel overlay, the Repro control panel overlay. So by painting it all white, it'll be all even, and the white will really help the colors on the Repro CPO to pop. So we'll go and do that. And so, yeah, let's go knock that out. Okay, while the clear coat on the underside of the control panel is drying, a couple more things I wanted to do. I pulled the 4 best carriage bolts that were on the control panel. I'm going to repurpose them to hold the joystick in place. Let me just double check now that I think of it, if it will actually fit. Yeah, that'll fit. So that's gonna, these 4 bolts, I sanded off all the rust. I could have put them in the tumbler, but I'm trying to, I guess, work quickly here. Sanded off all the rust on the head as much as I could, and I've hit them with a couple of coats of the Rust-Oleum Universal Black. So that's drying, and while all of this is drying, I want to take a look at the joystick that we're going to use. I think this is the better of the two sort of skinny Wickos that I've got, 4-way Wickos. Leaf switches are in decent shape. Wiring is, something I can work with. There's a staple that's like zip tied in that I'm gonna have to remove. But at a minimum, I want to take this apart and kind of take a look at the grommet and make sure that's in good shape. And I'm gonna clean up the shaft on the joystick here, which is a bit rusty. So a couple things we need to do. First, I have to grab my needle nose pliers, which I forgot to grab. So we've got that here. I've got a bunch of different ones. We got to remove the E-clip and just be careful with this. You don't want it to go flying across the room. So hold on tight and just pull it off. Here we go, nice and easy. And the shaft will remove from the assembly. We can take a look at, so our dust washer here looks fine. So what I'm going to do with this is basically put this in my power drill, and I'll just hold some sandpaper, and we'll sand all of the rust off and make the drill do all of the work. And then I'll tape off the ball top, because the ball top looks almost perfect. I'll tape that off with blue painter's tape, and then I'll hit this with the clear coat. It'll be matte. I don't know if I should maybe get gloss for it, but that should be fine for now. And the other thing I want to do, like I said, is take a look at the grommet. So I'm going to remove the 4 screws holding this joystick assembly in place. And yeah, I got these joysticks just in a parts lot that I bought from a former CLOV member. Lots of sort of different random odds and ends, mostly joysticks, some buttons, that sort of thing. And there were 2 of these in there. And I guess this is the same joystick that was used maybe in Frogger and some other stuff too. So we open it up and we see there's a couple things here. Whoa! We've got a grommet, and we've got another plastic washer, and we've got a metal washer, and we've got sort of the actuator here. And I just want to take a look at what's going on inside here. We do have quite a bit of dust, if you can see that sort of sliding around in there. That's normal from the the grommet sort of kind of disintegrating. And just taking a look here, and we can use the joystick to kind of actuate it. We can just see right away, and I'm making it worse, and it's totally destroyed now. Good news is I do have some reproduction ones. Yeah, I think those are downstairs though. So let me go ahead. I'm just going to clean all this up, and I'll grab the new grommet, and then we'll put it back together, and it'll be ready for action. Except, yeah, and then I'll go and clean up the joystick shaft. So yeah, let's clean up and then grab that new grommet. All right, the clear coat on the underside is dry. We've got the paint on the carriage bolts for the joystick and the joystick shaft, clear coat, drying, and I think I'm ready to put some white paint on the top of the control panel. Again, I'm using the white version of my old reliable Rust-Oleum Universal Satin paint and primer in one. And yeah, we're doing this outside in the dark because I want to get it done tonight so I can get the Repro control panel overlay applied tomorrow. So I need the paint to dry overnight tonight, and I couldn't be bothered to drag out my big lights into the yard, so I've just got my head-mounted LED, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So I've not used the white version of this paint before, but looks pretty good. And yeah, again, I've got the hinges taped off, and I've sanded off all of the flash corrosion and that sort of thing. So, and then cleaned it with the Sprayway glass cleaner. So we should be good to go. I've got to pay sort of close attention to getting the underside here. So I'm going to lift it up, maybe hold it by the hinges, and make sure I'm getting that angle. So here we go. And okay. And I don't really need to go too crazy here. So I'm just going to kind of do 2 light coats, and that should do the trick. Again, because no one will ever actually see this paint. It's just meant to smooth out the blotchiness and help make the control panel overlay colors pop. I'm walking all into the paint. It's not bad. All right, I'm gonna let that dry, and I'll come back in about half an hour, and I'll put a second coat on, but I won't show you that because it'll be just the same as this. Okay, everything is nice and dry now, and I've got everything I need to put my new reproduction overlay, my new reproduction control panel overlay that I got from this old game onto the repaired control panel. And I'm always nervous when I'm doing this kind of thing, but yeah, let's do it together. So I've got all the tools that I need. Obviously, I've got the new CPO. I've got the instructions from this old game. Good pair of scissors. I've got Rapid Tack, a new microfiber cloth, a couple of clamps. I've got a squeegee, an artwork squeegee that has some felt on it. I've got a X-Acto knife with a fresh blade. I've got some painter's tape, and we should be good to go. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to move the CPO out of the way for a second, and I'm going to clean our freshly repaired and painted control panel, and I'm going to use the Rapid Tack for that. So just spray this down a little bit. Okay, and yeah, I think I'm going to use the wet method that I know not everybody likes, but I feel like it gives you the most sort of margin for error when you're doing this stuff. And I'm human, I make mistakes, so I'd rather not have a small mistake turn into a unrecoverable error and force me to wait to get another whole new CPO. So just making sure I get all the dust and debris and everything off. And I think we're good. I might have to use the heat gun a little bit because there are some like severe bends over here. I'll wipe down the Rapid Tack here. I think Rapid Tack is like, I don't know what's in it. I think it's mostly alcohol and soap. I don't know if it even says on it. I was supposed to shake it. And we'll do that now. Because I'll be using a bit more of this. And just making sure that I don't see any dust or anything. Okay. And then what we have to do first is obviously line it up really, really well. And Pengo is a little bit interesting in that there's no sort of markings exactly where on the CPO the holes are supposed to go. So we're going to kind of eyeball it here, and I'm going to hold it up to the light and kind of get it centered in the middle here. I think the width of the CPO, the new CPO, is kind of perfect. There's no overhang on the sides. I think it's a little bit taller than it needs to be. So let me just get this a bit. All right, I think I've got it lined up exactly where I want it. And I use that flashlight there to help me line up the holes. And I'm going to use some painter's tape here to kind of help lock it in place. All right. Yeah, I've already got the clamps on, but the tape helps, just a little bit more, because you don't want this thing to, once you get it all lined up, you don't want it slipping around. So There we go. And I guess my game plan is to sort of secure this top part and then, you know, smooth that all out and then use that to hold it in place while I sort of work my way around these tricky sort of bends here. But yeah, oh, let's, again, I'm nervous. I'm always nervous when I'm doing this sort of thing. Like with electronics, you know, I always know I can like just do it over, just redo it over and over again until you get it right. But artwork, cosmetic stuff, there's less margin for error. So looking at the instructions, surface prep, cleaned, yep, painted, we wiped it down, we aligned it, we used a flashlight to align it. We are going to use, like I said, a little bit of heat from my heat gun to get around these bends, and we'll trim out the holes afterwards. And yeah, like I said, I'm going to use the wet method with my squeegee here, right? That's what you call it. So yeah, here goes. We'll pull this back a bit. We'll bend it. We'll cut a good sort of chunk of this. And I want to make sure that I don't get it to sort of flap back while I'm doing this. But yeah, here here goes nothing. Oh. All right, I'm gonna not talk through this just so I can hopefully concentrate. First thing I need to do is just get the corner started to peel the backing off. Oh man. You know, I've done this a bunch of times before, but it always makes me a little bit nervous. All right, here we go. The 3M backing paper is coming off. All right. Okay, come down here and make a cut. Now I'm doing it left-handed, which is not what I wanted to do. Okay, so that's good. Spray this down a little bit. Okay, and then with my squeegee, we'll slowly work it down, flatten it out. And yeah, this CPO is going onto the control panel. We'll squeeze out all the liquid. And there's a little bit of a slight bend up here at the top. It's looking pretty good so far. Of course, this is the easy part. This is not the part with the bend. Well, the real bends. All right, and instead of cutting the excess on the top, I'm going to flip this over. I'm actually going to wipe down the backside here just a little bit to make sure it adheres well. Yeah, this excess on the top is good because it allows us to sort of wrap the CPO over. Let me try to do this this way. And You know what? Let me get my heat gun set up real quick. Real quick, just to put a little bit of heat on that to help us make that bend, because that's sharper of a bend than I really want to do without heat. And now I'm scrambling. And yeah. Like, this is such a, you know, non-stressful thing, and I'm just making it more stressful than it needs to be. So let's put a little bit of heat on the low setting just to bend this a little bit. It's almost like a hair dryer. And you can sort of use a hair dryer if you need one, if you don't have a heat gun. And yeah, we'll bend this over here. And there goes my heat gun. Oh man, I need a lot more heat than that to make that bend. Okay, let me get a whole bunch of clamps and sort of hold that down, so I'll be right back. All right, I've got that all clamped down now. And I used a level just to, you know, add some, spread out the force a bit. But yeah, I think so far we're going okay. So I'll take these clamps off. And we'll need a lot more heat to work this down around the front. Okay, get this tape out of the way. All right, and now we can add some wrap attack here. And we'll peel the rest of the backing off. Come on. There we go. Okay, and I can see a tiny bit right there. The backing is still on, so I'm going to use my X-Acto knife and very carefully take that off. There we go. Put that where I'm not going to poke myself. More wrap attack. And yeah, there's a little bit of stuff right here. Okay, and then we will do the flat part at least. Coming down from the middle. Hopefully you can see this well. All right. Looking good. Okay. Yeah, and the wrap attack doesn't interfere with the glue or adhesive, anything like that. It will evaporate once everything is drying in place, and the CPO will be on nice and securely. Make sure we get all the air bubbles out. And now, like I said, we need some heat to make these bends, and then again we'll need clamps to hold everything in place. Okay, so let's get a little bit of heat here. And I've got my heat gun on the lower setting, and I need to pay attention to where the bends are. And we're just making this material softer and more pliable so that it will go on easier and go around these bends without cracking or breaking or separating from the material. So a little bit of heat, and it says in the instructions from this old game too that use a little heat to help form the overlay around bends and curves. So that's what we're doing. Don't want to go too crazy though and warp it. So let's see how we're doing there. There we go. And it wants to come right back, especially because it's wet. All right, I think if I get it around the first bend, I can get clamps on the sides. Okay, that's good. Come over here. That's good. Okay. And let's see if we can help with the adhesion here. I think we're on that bend pretty good. Sorry if this is boring or stressful for you. Come on. Okay. And we need some more heat here to make these next two bends. So we'll just come in, give it some more of this. All right, I am reasonably happy with how this is on. I think we're pretty much good to go here. The only thing I'm a tiny bit worried about again is the sharp bends around the bottom, but with all these clamps on, I think we'll be good. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit lifted around this bend here, but I think we'll be okay for the most part. So I'm gonna let this kind of dry, and then we'll come back in a little bit and see how we're doing. Okay, the new CPO has been sitting here for a bit, sort of drying out and hopefully getting fully adhered. I've got a whole bunch of clamps holding it in place, and I moved them around a couple times just to make sure we're not getting any air bubbles developing. I had to make one little incision to relieve, to let the air out, and I don't even know where it is. You'll likely never see it. It's sort of in this area here, but I think we're looking pretty good. I'm going to give it a little bit more time to completely, dry. And yeah, while we're waiting on that, I figure I'll put the joystick back together. And I should have been paying attention more closely, just to make sure I'm doing it right. I did print out this sort of exploded drawing. This actually comes from the elevator action schematic, or the elevator action manual from Taito. I guess they used a very similar controller. This looks like it might be an 8-way. but of course Pengo used a 4-way, but it sort of shows me where I need to go. And even then, it doesn't indicate, you know, which of these two washers is metal or plastic, so I'll have to look at the other one here that I've got to make sure we're good. Another thing, remember I mentioned that I was going to use a reproduction grommet because the old one was blown out. Well, I grabbed the reproduction grommets that I have, and this is just one of them. These are made by Andrew B. on Clove, and this is actually too big, right? So this is designed for really Robotron, you know, fatter Wickos, and of course we're using the skinny Wicco. This is the size that we need, and you can see there's a good size, you know, it sort of fits a similar footprint, but the size of the shaft of the joystick is much smaller. So sorry, Andy, can't use yours here, but it was never designed for that. We'll keep that for future projects. So what I ended up doing was I opened up the other joystick that I had, and its grommet is actually in great shape. So we're going to use this one from the other joystick, so it'll be in good shape there. I put the bad one back into this joystick, so technically this still works, even though it's really sloppy and a mess. But maybe I'll get a new one someday if I need one for that joystick. Otherwise, we cleaned everything up relatively well, and we can put the thing back together now. Remember that I sanded all the rust off and painted with clear coat the joystick shaft, which looks pretty good. You know, still not perfect. It doesn't look like a museum piece, but in much better shape than it was originally. And now I will attempt to take this painter's tape off that I put a ton of it on, so that I didn't get any paint on the ball top. There we go. There's a lot of little pieces on it too that are hopefully not going to all just fall apart. Maybe come off all at once. Okay, now. All right. But yeah, I think we did a pretty good job sanding off all of the corrosion, and then again covering it with the clear coat. So that's good to go. Get that out of here. So yeah, let's put this puppy back together. Obviously start with the ball shaft and the dust washer. That'll go through the top here. And again, I'm going to double check here, and I see on this one the metal washer is on the bottom, so I'll do the same. Put the plastic washer on top. And it looks like might have gone like this. Plastic washer on top. And then the, I want to say nipple, but the more convex side of the grommet appears to go up. So we'll put that into place here. And that needs to line up with the holes. So like this. All right, and then we have a metal washer. It looks like it's got a wear pattern over here. And we've got our main assembly. And I've also cleaned, I maybe could have done a better job on cleaning this. But you can sort of see that 4-way gate, similar to what's on the top here, kind of prevents it from moving in the wrong direction. And I want to make sure that I line this up correctly. I also did clean the leaf switches here, just really put a business card between them and pulled it tight. So let's make sure we're lined up here. I think it should go like that, right? Okay. And we will drop our screws in here. I forgot to grab my screwdriver from the USB charger. Some people, I guess, don't love the fact that I use a power screwdriver, think that I'm going to over torque things and damage them, but honestly, that screwdriver is very, very weak. It doesn't have much power, which often you want a power screwdriver to have a ton of power, but I like this screwdriver because it's so weak. I know that I can use it with less risk of damaging things. It's my Skill USB rechargeable power screwdriver. You'll find a link to it and lots of other tools that I use in the video description. Let's sort of work this on. And yeah, it's a very, very underpowered power screwdriver, which is great for working with delicate things like plastic and PCBs, that sort of thing. It's got significantly less power than what I could do with, you know, a regular manual screwdriver. But I think we are pretty good here. All right, and let's see. What's that clickiness? Oh, that's the. It's because the. I guess what would you call this? The actuator is not on yet. I got to kind of move these leaf switches out of the way to let the thing kind of slide down. I got to sort of move all of them off at once. I dropped it, but fortunately it didn't go rolling across the room. All right, and there we go. All right, got the actuator on. And I believe the last piece should just be the E-clip, which should go on pretty easily. And I've got my needle nose pliers to help coax it into the correct position. Whoa! I don't know if you saw that. It went flying everywhere. It bounced off of the control panel and landed right back in front of me. And gosh, do I feel lucky that it didn't go into the abyss and be completely lost in my garage forever, forcing me to make a trip to Ace Hardware to find a replacement. But let's try to get this on one more time. There we go. And that looks like it's correctly seated in the little slot. So yeah, here we go. Restored, nice and tight. Skinny Wicco joystick, ready to be put back into use for years of enjoyment. Obviously, we'll have to rewire it, but in terms of the joystick motion, I think we're pretty good. So, yeah, cool. So I've already gone ahead and cleaned, whoops, dropping everything today. I've got my buttons here. Again, I believe these are originals. They are the right color. You know, the two red buttons go on top as the action buttons, and the orangish yellow sort of buttons go on front as the player 1 and player 2 start. I completely disassembled these, soaked them in simple green, and then scrubbed them pretty good and put them back together, and they all feel pretty good and look pretty good too, so that's good to go. One thing, I'm not really going to be able to attach the buttons just yet because you know, these are long leaf switch buttons, and obviously this is a metal control panel, and each of them really needs 2 of these spacer rings. You know, 2 thin ones or 1 a thick one. It's similar to what's on my Carnival, and I only have 2 of these. There are only 2 of these left on the control panel when it had been converted to Time Soldiers. So I went and I ordered a bunch of these. Today is Friday. They should be arriving tomorrow. But probably not in time for me to get the video out, but I'll have them available to really mount the buttons with the leaf switch holders in the control panel the way it's supposed to be. So just for an example, you'll get a little bit more thickness here because of the control panel, but without the spacers, when the button is engaged in the holder, and probably be more like this once the control panel is on, it's already pressing the button. And with one of these spacers, even just with one of them, you'll still end up having the button press, you know, close the leaf switch. But with 2 of them, it can be, you know, mounted onto the control panel, no problem. It's not sitting right, actually. There we go. And you know, pushed all the way in, and it won't trigger the button unless you actually close it to trigger the switch. And these switches need to be adjusted already. Let's see. Yeah, it should be more like that. You want a very, very narrow gap. Even that's a little not enough. All right, so that very narrow gap, like you can see there. Whoa, if it zooms. And yeah, so that when we press the button, it closes that switch. So anyway, I think we can turn our attention back to the control panel itself. Again, I don't want to take these clamps off until I'm certain that everything is good to go, but I would like to cut the holes out for the buttons. And so I've got this flashlight on to give us a lot of light, and we can sort of see, we can move the flashlight around and see where all the buttons are supposed to be. And we can cut the control panel overlay to fit our buttons. So I've got a nice, sharp, brand new blade on my X-Acto knife. And with the illumination coming from the flashlight, oh, this is stressful too. I can come in here and cut this open. One thing I always learned to try to avoid is simply taking the blade all the way to the edge and then going around in a circle, because you risk having it run a little bit and start cracking along that. So I think the better kind of way to do it is almost to go in a circle and never come at it from that hard angle. And we'll clean this up obviously before we're done, but just to really kind of start it almost like a spiral. There we go. You'll end up with a cleaner, I think, a cleaner cut. And yeah, it's kind of still, this clamp is in my way, but and with this one, or with all the buttonholes, the buttons themselves will cover up a little bit of the jaggedness, so you don't have to make it, you know, sort of super perfect, but we'll just trim off any of this really obvious excess. And yeah, I think that's pretty good for this first one here. All right, you see that? We've got our nice buttonhole that we'll be able to put our button into, and yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these others, cut the other holes out. I'm going to be very, very careful to be super precise for the joystick hole in the middle, and I'll cut these holes for the mounting carriage bolts for the joystick, and then we'll be ready to take the clamps off and put these controls on. All right, all the holes are cut, and we are ready to take these clamps off and put some controls on. So let's see, let's take a really nice close look. Okay, yeah, so there's a tiny bit of like overhang in the bottom. I'm not going to be able to fold that over, so I'll probably end up trimming that off. And I think we're nice and secure up there. Looking around, don't immediately see any significant air bubbles. Maybe a tiny bit right here, but that'll be fine. Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. So let's put some controls on this thing to see what it'll actually look like on the game. So let me pull this painter's tape off of the hinges. All right, this is this is looking great. Very happy with how this came out. And yeah, there's a ton of white overspray on the underside of the control panel, but that's perfectly fine. No issues with that whatsoever. So yeah, that's the finished underside. Hinges are moving freely. That one and that one are good. What is this? Oh, one of the rubber pieces came off of the, what do you call them? Clamps. Tiny bit of moisture still coming out of the bottom here. So, ooh. All right, this is fine. I feel a small pocket of air in there, and I think it's actually wet with some of the wrap attack. So I'm going to go back, grab my X-Acto knife, pop this sucker back out, And we'll put a tiny little puncture, and this is actually a great place for it because that is underneath and exposed. So it's right here. So I'm going to come in and just put a tiny little slit there, and you can see it coming right out. And I'll grab my squeegee and maybe a paper towel, and we'll make sure we get all of that out. This is the Rapidac doing its job. All right. Getting those air bubbles out. All right, with that squared away, I hope we are ready to install these controls. So joystick actually fits right through the it's a small ball top, so it fits right through the hole at the top of the control panel. And I'll take these freshly painted carriage bolts out of the Pop-Tart box I was using to paint them, and we'll try to line these suckers up and get them lined in. Okay, one here. It's kind of awkward to do this. Once I get two in, the other ones will line up fine. There we go. Put these nuts on just to hold it in place. And yeah, I'm going to have to take this off at some point to position everything and redo the wiring. So this is just a temporary fitting. There we go. But hopefully this will look nice. I did actually go through and found a couple more pockets of air and Rapidac, and this one doesn't really want to go on. Little slit with the X-Acto knife, and we're back in business. All right, that's good. And then these next two should be pretty easy. And I think I already mentioned that I did sort of trim off the excess on the bottom, just so that it didn't get snagged on anything. Come on, there we go. Trying not to damage. Often what you can do is tighten the carriage bolts too tight, and they'll tear and twist the brand new CPO that you just put on, which is bad news. So something to be avoided. Here we go, last one. This is exciting. Probably can't hear it in my voice just because I'm concentrating. How does that look? Let's tuck this underneath here. Yeah. How does that look? That looks nice, right? And we can go ahead and pop in our buttons. Again, I'm not going to install them permanently. There we go. Into yellow or orange right here. How does that look? Isn't that infinitely better than what we had at the beginning of the video? Look at that. You would never know that this was all cut up, all torn up and damaged before. Is that an air bubble? That better not be an air bubble. Anyway, I'll worry about some of that later. But yeah, look how awesome this new CPO looks. Joystick looks great, buttons look great. Again, I've got to mount them permanently, but yeah, look at that. Good as new. You know, some little nicks here, so maybe 99% as good as new. But often these were not absolutely perfect coming out of the factory. And certainly by the time any kids or teenagers or even grown-ups had a chance to bang on it, it wasn't perfect for long, but doesn't that look great? And yeah, that was a ton of work to get to this point, to repair the, you know, the extra holes that have been drilled into the metal, to do all of that repair with J-B Weld and Bondo and painting and everything. But it is sure worth it. This is going to look awesome on the cabinet. And yeah, thanks for watching all of this hard work. But I do it because it's fun. I do it because I like sharing it with you all. And yeah, but hey, you know, I think even though we're ending on a high note here, I want to end on an even higher note. So let me get set up to show you one more really cool thing that you aren't going to want to miss. All right, here's the one more thing. Do you remember this cabinet? This is the Dynamo HS7 JAMA cabinet that I picked up for free alongside the Pengo back earlier this year. And yeah, if you see, I actually found the Superman cardboard bezel. It was actually hiding in there was a sandwich stack of old bezels sort of there, just turned around. So yeah, that Superman bezel was hiding there the whole time. And I actually just threw on the SNK Street Smart marquee that came from the converted joust, if you remember that project, just because it fit perfectly. And I got a piece of angle aluminum that I cut and drilled just to act as the top marquee bracket. I'll have to paint it at some point. But yeah, so I've been using this as a JAMA cabinet just to test JAMA PCBs, that sort of thing, because it's got a working monitor and a working JAMA setup. And this right here, this is a working Pengo PCB. I bought this actually at an auction from TNT Amusements, so thank you, Mr. Todd Tuckey, for selling this to me. Great price at that auction recently. You should definitely check out his live stream auctions if you're looking for deals and that sort of thing. So yeah, working Pengo board, but Pengo's not JAMA. So what the heck am I doing with this, right? So I actually got from PCBjunkie.net a Sega Pengo to JAMA adapter. So that plugs right into the Pengo original pinout, the edge connector, and then the JAMA harness plugs into the adapter, so I can run this Pengo game in a JAMA setup. And so again, the Pengo cabinet has a working JAMA setup inside. It's kind of a mess though. The wiring, a lot of the wires have been cut out. It's kind of janky, so I'm probably going to end up replacing that JAMA harness. So for now, we can test the Pengo PCB with the JAMA adapter in this JAMA Dynamo HS7 cabinet with the mostly Superman artwork. So everything's plugged in, ready to go. We can turn it on. And one of the things that's going to be weird though is, you know, Pengo is a vertical game and this cabinet is set up for horizontal. I can rotate it to vertical, but yeah, it takes a few minutes and I don't want to do that. And there we go. We've got Pengo running on the monitor right there. And yeah, how does that look? The monitor needs to be adjusted a little bit. Let me bring you in over here so you can have a nicer look. And maybe if I go like this, I can, well, that's going to be upside down to make it look right. But yeah, we've got Pengo working here. It's not on free play. Let me try coining up. All right, see what that does. Nope. I guess that coin switch doesn't work in this cabinet. How about this one? There we go. All right. Oh, it added 2 credits somehow. So we'll have to take a look at the, are there any dip switches? Yeah, oh yeah, there's 2 banks of dip switches. We'll have to figure that out right here, but we can go ahead and start a 1-player game. All right, and I changed the the camera refresh rate. So here we go. We've got Pengo, and I'm going to try to And this is an 8-way joystick, so oh yeah. It's hard to turn sideways, turn my head sideways and play this, but I'll try. Yeah, the 8-way joystick is screwing me up. Here we go. Nope, ran right into him. That's not great. All right, but if you notice, the one thing that's a little bit disappointing, but I knew this when I bought the game, was as I knew. Oh, there, he got me. Oh, yeah. When I got this, I knew. So there's two different versions. I guess 3 lives, or maybe I got a bonus life. Let me just off myself real quick. There we go. So there's at least two different. Player 1 ready? How many lives did this thing give me? There we go. Do I still have a life? Game over, yeah. So, oh, listen to that. So there's at least two, like I was saying, at least 2 different versions of the Pengo ROMs that were released in the US. There was an initial version that had as the theme song Hot Butter Popcorn. Is the screen flickering a little bit? It looks like it's going blue I haven't rebuilt this monitor yet. So yeah, one version of the ROMs had Hot Butter Popcorn, which is sort of at least for me, what I think of as the classic Pengo music, but I guess Sega didn't have the rights to use that music in the US, only in Japan, so they came out with a revised ROM that had the music that you hear here. There's also, I think the difficulty is changed, and the sort of how the board gets built during, the sort of intro to each stage is a little bit different. So, I'm a little bit disappointed that I don't have the Hot Butter Popcorn version. I knew that, when I bought the PCB from Todd Tuckey, I knew that it didn't have Hot Butter Popcorn, but I'll have to figure out if there's some way I can change that, fix that, and get the version that I want with the music that I want on this PCB. But yeah, we can start another game right here. But yeah, we've got a working Pengo PCB. So yeah, just wanted to show you that as a nice little bonus at the end. So why don't we head back down to the basement and wrap up the video down there? So yeah, that was part 4 of the Sega Pengo arcade restoration series. And I'm definitely really happy with what we accomplished, right? So if you go back to the beginning of the video, remember how bad that Time Soldier's control panel looked, and how awesome it looks now at the end, converted back to Pengo. So lots of work, but really, really happy with how that turned out. And if we think about it, there really isn't a ton left to do for this project. So what's left to do? We've got to restore the coin door. So the coin door has a bunch of rust and paint that's been chipping off, so we're gonna have to take care of that. We've got to rewire the control panel, right? We didn't fully, install all the controls just yet. We probably need to replace the entire JAMA harness because I'm just not thrilled with how hacked up it is. And then we need to apply the rest of the new art package from this old game. And guys, I think we'll be done at that point with this project. So yeah, if this is your first time to the channel, welcome. Please consider subscribing. I release new videos like this one basically every Sunday afternoon. If you like this video, hit that like button. Definitely helps me out and helps YouTube to know to recommend videos like this to people like you. And if you really, really like what I'm doing, consider becoming a paid channel member. So basically what this is a program that YouTube has. You give me a couple bucks a month and you get access to some really cool exclusive channel member perks only available to channel members, including a monthly members only live stream, access to a private members only Discord server where we're having a ton of fun, just chatting almost all day long while most of us are supposed to be working. You also get early access to all new videos. So like I said, most of my videos come out Sunday afternoons, but Overtime Arcade paid channel members get access typically 24 hours or more in advance. So you might be watching this on Sunday or later, but Overtime Arcade channel members are watching this video probably on Saturday. And yeah, I just want to say thanks to our newest channel member here at Overtime Arcade, Greg Quintiliano. Greg, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your support and looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better. If you're interested in any of the tools or parts that I used in this video or any of my videos, down in the channel description below, you'll find links to basically all of that stuff. So, if you want to use that for any of your projects, please avail yourself of those resources. And I also have a merchandise shop. So again, links down below to hats and t-shirts and that sort of thing. And there's actually another sale going on right now. And this is good till the end of Sunday, so the end of September 17th. So hopefully you're watching this video when it came out and you can take advantage of this. We've got free standard shipping going on right now. So save a couple bucks in shipping and maybe buy some extra stuff. Holidays are coming up and yeah, you want to look good. So yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Charlie. This has been Overtime Arcade. I'll see you next time.
Overtime!